So hello everyone, welcome back to our video. So in this video, we'll be discussing about 5 key aspects about retirement. And for this discussion, we have PlanAhead Wealth Advisors founder and CEO, Mr. Vishal Dhawan. Hello Vishal, it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Hello.
Yeah. So before we start our discussion, so the reason we had decided to speak about retirement is that in recent times retirement has changed a lot from what it was for the generation ago or a generation ago, and now retirement is not merely about just thinking that the income would be stopped. No, now it's evolved a lot in a sense that now it is about structuring the wealth, preserving the capital, and ensuring there is longevity to the wealth that we have, right? So with this, the first question that I would like to discuss with you is that now many families and individuals think that they have accumulated enough wealth, but are they underestimating the longevity risk in the retirement planning?
Well, most certainly. I think, traditionally retirement was a phase where you retired at about 60. You lived for maybe 10, 15 years. There might have been dependency on children, for example. So it was structured very differently from how people think about it today. So most people today are thinking that, they want to retire in their 40s or early 50s. Life expectancy has gone up dramatically. For many people, life expectancy post-retirement is going to be 30, 40 years. And therefore, the way you think about your retirement corpus and how much is enough is going to be dramatically different from what used to happen earlier. In addition, because of the fact that there are phases within retirement as well, you do find that the immediate phase, especially when you retire younger or when you're very active, tends to have a lot of additional costs associated with it. So you could end up traveling much more, gifting much more because you go to much more social events. You could end up doing some charity and philanthropy, etc. So that phase could actually be as expensive or maybe even more expensive than what your pre-retirement phase was. In the second phase, you still continue to spend money in your retirement, but the places and avenues where you spend it may undergo a change. For example, you might find that there's a huge addition to healthcare costs on top of whatever you need to sustain your lifestyle. And then in the last phase, you may end up finding that that's when my costs really go down. So I think it's important to understand that retirement is also not a single phased process. You will go through transitions in your retirement as well, and you need to plan for that along with the long life cycles and lifespans that people are going to have to go through.
Got it. So in the retirement discussion itself, so people usually focus on a lot on building the corpus, but should they also start thinking about creating a system where they can have regular income in the retirement phase?
It's actually very critical because I think the question of how much is enough for me to retire has consumed too much of mind space. And I think it's important to change that conversation to saying that yes, that's a really important question, but probably equally important, especially as you get very close to retirement, is how do I create an architecture for income during my retirement? And what you'll end up finding is that there are multiple things that you need to keep in mind when you're doing that. Number one, you need to ensure that your sources of income are diversified. One of the most popular tools that is currently spoken about is what are called systematic withdrawal plans or SWPs. They're very efficient because they can be done from growth assets. You can set up a fixed amount of money to get from there. You can increase or decrease that as and when you want. And you also find tax efficiency is very high because you pay only for the appreciation on those particular units. But we need to keep in mind that you need to diversify your flows. So you may want to support and supplement that SWP strategy with maybe rental incomes, either coming in through a traditional residential real estate property, which is not the best in terms of yields, or you look at structures like real estate investment trusts or REITs, which basically give you rental income, which comes in the form of a cash flow and allows you to support that. So we do think that you need to look at multiple strategies when you create that income architecture in your retirement, so that you're not completely undone because one part of your retirement income architecture didn't work in the way that you thought it would.
Okay, got it. Now you also mentioned about tax. So we have an understanding that tax, tax inefficiency especially can erode your wealth quietly. So what are the structural consideration families and individuals should keep in mind when they are planning about retirement or thinking about retirement with respect to tax inefficiencies?
So I think one of the things that will happen for a lot of wealthy families now is that they will probably not end up consuming all their assets during their lifetime at all. And therefore, they need to think very carefully about at what stage, in a tax efficient manner, they can actually transfer their wealth to the next generation. And for that, they obviously need to know how much is probably going to be enough for them during their lifespan and how much of it is going to be generally just passed on. So they may want to think about things like gifting, they may want to think about things like family trusts, the private family trusts that can actually support this distribution architecture. And of course, because a lot of people who will be wealthy will also have businesses that they will be holding, they also need to think about how that transfer of ownership of that business will end up happening in retirement such that it's tax efficient and also designed around continuity. Because what you want ideally during your retirement is on one side continuity without any disruption, and at the same time you want consistency in income, you want a collaborative approach to continue in the way that you've been thinking about things. So there are many aspects around this, and many of them are critical because if you don't do this right, just like compounding worked well for you positively during your accumulation phase, you might find that the tax leakages that you end up happening become negative for you during the distribution phase. It's very, very critical, therefore, as you work on that, to work with your succession advisor, to work with your tax advisor and your financial planner to put this all together in a structure that works well.
Got it. Got it. Now, moving beyond from the structural changes, now we understand in this process, in the retirement planning and the process, there is also a transition in between. So transition, when I say transition, it means that when we are in the investment cycle, individuals move from growth and accumulation phase to having a regular income and capital preservation kind of a phase in the retirement. Now, when there is a transition, and we know that not all transition and change happens can be smooth. So, what are the things that they can make sure that the transition that they face or will they be facing, it's smooth?
So I think it's a great point that somehow the way the brain works very often when you move to retirement is that capital preservation now becomes the focus. We need to understand though that inflation is still going to continue. For the last many years, inflation has continued to be at 5-6% per annum. If you're a wealthy individual and you look at your own inflation, you might find that it's even more because lifestyle inflation creeps have been very significant. So the way to think about this is that I need the stability of wealth preserving sort of strategies to a certain extent for my regular cash flow needs, which are in the short to medium term. At the same time, I need to have growth exposure to essentially beat inflation so that my wealth can continue to retain its value, not just on a nominal basis but on a real basis adjusted for inflation. And therefore it's very important to combine these together, build this capital preservation model for a part of your money to support your needs which are short term, and build the other pool for growth in a manner where you continue to be able to grow your money meaningfully and then hopefully be able to support either causes or the next generation in a way that you want it to.
Okay. Actually, this also ties in with the last final question that I have, that in this retirement planning and in that phase particularly, the most common situation the individuals find themselves is that how do they balance between capital preservation with the future growth?
I think it's not an easy thing, but I think it still needs to be thought through very carefully, saying that if you go back in history and look at data, your only real way to ensure that you come closer to better outcomes is to be very diversified in terms of choices that you end up making. So you need to have some of those very conservative tools, deposits, debt funds, uh, bonds. These are all instruments which are designed to create income, but probably not beat inflation. On the other side, you need growth assets, which could come either from investing domestically in equities or in international investments, again on the equity side. And we also need to keep in mind that as India becomes wealthier and wealthier, a lot of our money needs are likely to come for things that we want to do outside of the country, whether it is education for the children, grandchildren, whether it is travel, some of the choices of what we choose to import because we prefer those products as compared to something else. A lot of this is going to happen, and therefore very carefully using the LRS, which is a liberalized remittance scheme, to invest overseas is also going to be a very important part during your retirement. Of course, keeping in mind that there are reporting of those assets that need to get done in a particular manner, taxes that need to be paid appropriately, etc. But generally our belief is that if you want to be able to manage all of these risks, you will have to diversify across asset classes on one side, and second is diversify across geographies as well, so that this risk can be managed. And while you do all of this, keep in mind that part of my needs are income generation, part of them are growth for the future to preserve value of my assets.
Got it. So with this we end our discussion. So thank you everyone to in our conversation. So if you liked our video, please like, share and subscribe. And thank you everyone. Thank you Vishal for this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Disclaimers. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing. Registration granted by SEBI, membership of BUSL and certification from National Institute of Securities Markets, NISM, in no way guarantee performance of the intermediary or provide any assurance of returns to investors. The information is only for consumption by the client and such material should not be redistributed. The securities quoted are for illustration only and are not recommendatory. This material is for information and educational purposes only.